very much. It is truly an honor for me to be present amongst the esteemed colleagues, your eminences. I have to comment briefly on the reflection done by Professor Homi K. Baba on our neighbors, ourselves. So I just have to begin by admitting the article as well as Dr. Baba's presentation of it were quite challenging for me to wrap my head around. It is not every day that I find myself reading Hegel, and I was reminded why I pursued a career in law rather than philosophy, although I do think that the two are not so distant cousins. That being said, the framework that Dr. Baba lays out for understanding community, hospitality, and to some extent one's own self resonated with me in a couple different ways. My first level of interaction with the piece was very personal, and the concepts of being both the other and the same as an immigrant to the United States resonated with me deeply. I experienced and continue to experience this tension as a post-colonial subject. I was born under the colonial rule of the Portuguese in Goa, and I experienced firsthand the liberation of Goa. Later in life, coming to New Orleans, adopting many of the cultural mores, and becoming deeply involved with the community, I still strive to preserve my own cultural roots through food, celebration, family, and faith. This to me is exemplary of the paradoxical community that Dr. Baba discusses. I am an integral part of the community, being entrusted by the community to decide some of their most intimate disputes as a family court judge. Yet, I am still othered in many ways as an immigrant, as a woman of color, and as a former colonial subject. The piece also speaks to me as a judge, moving beyond the personal who of my identity to the more categorical what I see. Much of what I do every day reflected in the dialectic that Professor Baba discusses. Ideally, the judge sits in the liminal space between two subjects, the parties of the lawsuit. The judge is called to be what Professor Baba calls the third, or the observer. The black robe we wear is meant to suppress any inkling of an identity beyond that of an arbiter of justice, sitting in the space between two dialectically opposed subjects, the plaintiff and defendant. I'm asked to sit in this space, but also, like Professor Baba discusses at the conclusion of his article, to move in and out of this role. As a judge, I'm also called to empathize with each party. To an extent, I'm asked to be objective, but to see both sides, seemingly one and the same task, but upon closer inspection, vastly different. After reading up on dialectic to better understand Professor Baba's work, I came to realize that the courtroom operates dialectically every day. The plaintiff has a thesis, or what we would call their theory of the case, and the defendant has their own antithesis, an opposed theory of the case. Ideally, as the third, I'm able to see both of these positions and synthesize some resolution. Ideally, I can bring both parties along with me into the liminal space of the observer, and they're able to confect a consent judgment between themselves, resolving the contradiction that brought them to court in the first place. We can think of the family as the most insular and tight-knit form of community, and it too is sometimes a paradoxical community. However, using a dialectical framework, the paradox can start to be understood and resolution might follow. I hope and pray that I have not grossly misapprehended the work of Professor Barber, but regardless, it spoke to me personally and professionally and has given me new perspective on my work and myself. Thank you all very much for participating in this exchange of ideas and challenging me to think in new and interesting ways. I thank you very much.
That is so beautiful.